Okay, so let's continue. Here we have, I'm going to make this smaller just so that it's kind of not in the way. And continuing with this theme, as you can see in the dissemination phase, again, that's about communicating the results to the appropriate audience. And that's where we left off. So let's move on to the next slide. All right. So in this slide, you can pretty much see some important things that I've highlighted. I'm playing around with this, excuse me. I'm trying to figure out where to put it. Can I make this smaller? I cannot make it smaller. Let's put it here. We're cutting off some of the terms, but it's okay. There we go. That's better. And I'm cleaning up some stuff off my desktop. So in the conceptual phase, again, I just want you to think about the problem, the literature, the purpose. In the design and planning phase, think about the research design, the procedures. In the empirical phase, think about data collection and analysis, or preparing for the analysis. And then in the analytic phase, you're thinking about actually analyzing the results and interpreting it in a meaningful way. This is also where you will visualize the data in any way. And in single subject research designs, data visualization is critical. It's really, really important, more so than in the other types of research investigations like experimental group designs, for example. And then again, the dissemination phase is really about communicating the results. So that's why that heart is there, because that's where your heart is. You know, you're doing the study for a reason, and it's to share and advance knowledge and, solve problems. And so, your heart's got to be in it in order for you to take on such a big endeavor. So when we think about the study's design or the design of any research investigation, we're thinking about a net. A study is like the net by which the procedures of a study are carried out. So, the design of a study is the net by which the procedures are carried out. And that means that strong design supports strong research plans. And so when you do the planning on the forefront, it makes it a lot easier to get the work done at the end. And I think that's where most people tend to go wrong, is that they fail to plan. And one of those great sayings is, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. Especially when you're conducting single case research designs. One of the benefits of these designs is that they're flexible and that the plans can change. But don't confuse flexibility with the concept that it's, by the fly. It's not by the fly. You must plan ahead, and you must really think about the treatment that you're going to provide ahead of time as much as possible, and prepare for it so that when you're conducting the study, you're able to follow some procedures, something that makes it replicable. And so really it takes a lot of planning on the forefront, understanding that research design structure and also the approach that you want to use within that research design. And you're more likely to see excellent quality research being conducted in the end, so that you can determine whether or not your approach was or was not effective. So that being said, we're now into single case research designs. I know I've talked about them a lot up until this point, even though we were really talking about the broad category. We were really speaking about clinical research, and then clinical practice research. And now we're in single case research designs. So we're in that tertiary level down. So again, we're thinking about clinical research as just a whole paradigm, right? And then we're thinking about clinical practice research, and then single case research designs. Okay, so what are single case research designs? Well, before we get into that, let's talk about why we even want to use single case research designs. Like, what makes them so important and so fantastic that everyone's, it's the it term now. I'm trying to block out the sunlight. So when we think about single case research designs, we want to think about, well, why use them, and what is the basic structure of them, and when should we use them? Because they're not going to apply to every circumstance, every situation, for example. How do we know that we're using these designs correctly? How do we interpret the data that we've collected according to the stipulations that are naturally occurring within this design construct or framework? And then where do we find or report research using single case research designs? And of course, how do we get started? So we're going to talk about these questions as we progress through the slides. So first things first, we have to test our methods. Single case research design is about testing our methods. So it's the great solution to that. Well, how do you know and report that your methods work? I mean, as a clinician, have you ever sat down and thought, is this working? You know, I know we see change over time and we see progress. I mean, that's what we're looking for as clinicians. I mean, why would you work with someone if you didn't want them to make progress in a certain area? But how do you know that that progress that they're made is really an attribute or is attributed to the intervention that you provided? It could be that someone else is working with them, or it could be that they learned something somewhere else, or it could be that they're just maturing and it's a factor of maturation. And so single case research designs allow us to test our methods and the effectiveness of them. So Engel and Shute wrote, as practitioners, we often think we know when a client is improving. Yet, when we use our own subjective conclusions, we are prone to human error. Single subject designs can be used to systematically test the effectiveness of a particular intervention and monitor client progress. And that's key. That's why I'm a big proponent and advocate of single case research designs and teaching clinicians and future clinicians how to use them, is because this is the research design for clinicians. Yet we're never trained on this. We're always trained on group designs and how to use inferential statistics, which is all great when you're doing big data, big research studies. But what about those individuals who don't have the ability to randomly assign participants in a group, or to even call them participants for that matter? Well, that's why we need single subject research designs, because this is for clinicians and it helps clinicians to monitor progress, which is something that we should be doing always. And then it helps us to test whether or not our approaches are actually working with our clients. So, single case research designs, and notice that I'm using these green glasses. I don't know if you paid attention, but up until this point, I've been using different types of glasses. And so for this particular, now that we're on single subject or single case research designs, which I use interchangeably, we're now using these green glasses. So the glasses have evolved throughout the presentation, and I hope you've been keeping up with that. And it's just a way for you to kind of stick with it. And remember back from earlier in the presentation, I mentioned that your glasses are the frame by which you view the world. And so in research, your glasses are the paradigm by which you use to approach your research from a very theoretical, high-level standpoint. Single subject research designs, single system research designs, single case research designs, applied behavior analysis designs, and even intra-subject replication designs are all terms that I've used, or have not necessarily used, but I have heard that refer to single case research designs. Now I'm going to stick with single case research designs, or SCR. Sometimes I'll say single subject, because those are the two most prevalent names that tend to accompany or tend to be used now in the literature. But over time, you will see studies that have been published using all of these terms. But basically, they just refer to a category of research designs that involve the study of a single entity. Okay, a single entity, but a single entity does not necessarily mean a person. A single entity can be an individual, an agency, a community, a company, a school, a group. Those are all entities. An entity is just a body. So you define what that body is. And that's another great reason why this is such a wonderful research design framework. Single subject designs or single case designs refer to a single entity and its own unique behaviors or traits without reference to others. Now that's critical. That's why I have it in red. Without reference to others. I mean, all of what we know about research up until this point compares people to other people. If you think about group designs, you're comparing groups, you're comparing means, you're comparing one group score to another group score. Single case research designs don't compare participants against or to each other. Each individual is their own control. Each entity is its own control. And we talked about what research entails. Remember, I mentioned that an experiment involves some sense of control. So we'll get into that to a certain degree, but that's really important for you to understand. So really let that resonate, This is a different framework of research because each individual is his or her own control, meaning my starting point is going to be my baseline. My starting point is pre-test or group. My reference point will be my post-test, if you think of it that way, but it's all within me. It's not comparing me to someone else. So in drawing back to the concept that we discussed earlier about, earlier in the lecture about experimental designs, if you think of repeated measures over time, which a lot of single subject designs involved, and that's pretty much different probes over time of the client's or the participant's performance, then if you think of a group design, you're going to think that a single subject design is kind of similar to it in that you've got a before treatment circumstance, you've got a treatment circumstance, and then you've got an after treatment circumstance that should have yielded a different outcome if that was the intention of the intervention that you provided. So that's kind of the basic structure of a single subject design study. Okay, so now that we understand the basic structure, we can get into the different phases. And I'm actually going to pause here, and I'm going to pick up in another video on expanding across these different phases and how that looks in a single subject design study. So stay tuned for that post.